With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has described the strikes against 3 nuclear sites in Iran as incredible and overwhelming success. The U.S. military strikes, which targeted key Iranian nuclear facilities, it marks a major escalation in the ongoing war between Iran and Israel, which has now entered its 2nd week. Hegseth said the strikes devastated Iran's nuclear program and they did obliterate Iran's nuclear ambitions. The U.S. Defense Secretary said it was important to note that Iranian troops or people were not targeted during the strikes.
Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump.
Addressing a press conference at the Pentagon, Hegseth briefly asserted that the mission was not about regime change in Iran, but he did not shy away from rolling out a warning for Tehran. Hegseth said U.S. forces were postured to defend themselves and take action if needed.
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
U.S. Top General Dan Kane, who is also the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said the strikes on Tehran's nuclear sites were carried out under Operation Midnight Hammer. It involved 125 U.S. military aircraft, including 7 B-2 stealth bombers and over 24 Tomahawk missiles. One of the targets was Fordo, a uranium enrichment plant hidden in a remote mountainside that is extremely important to Iran's nuclear ambitions. The U.S. said it also hit 2 other nuclear sites at Natanz and Isfahan. Kane said that this was the largest B-2 operational strikes in U.S. history, and the U.S. military was able to retain the element of surprise throughout the mission.
As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the 2nd longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves.
Within hours of the U.S. bombing, Iran launched a fresh strikes which hit parts of Tel Aviv and Haifa. Soon after, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi condemned the U.S. strikes on Tehran and said the country reserved the right to respond.
It's irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans. Happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up.
The U.S. bombing came as the Israel-Iran conflict continues to grow intense with back and forth attacks between the two sides. On Saturday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. forces struck 3 Iranian nuclear sites in a very successful attack, which happened just today. adding that Tehran's nuclear program has been obliterated. Trump had earlier said it may take 2 weeks for him to decide whether to bomb Iran. However, his actions came long before the deadline ended. In the latest developments, Iranian government said that there was no immediate danger to the public after U.S. struck 3 key nuclear facilities in Iran. Meanwhile, Israeli Defense Forces claim to launch fresh strikes on Iranian missiles and UAV sites in Isfahan, Bushehr, Ahvaz, and for the first time in Yazd region as well. Well, the U.S. has struck inside Iran, targeting its nuclear facilities. While the U.S. has warned Tehran against any retaliation, Iran has invoked its right to defend itself. The question being, will the strikes force Iran to return to negotiating table, or will it lead to even bigger conflict in West Asia? Our next report examines how Iran could respond.
The United States has joined the war against Iran. U.S. military planes have struck deep inside Iranian territory.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
U.S. President Donald Trump claims to have decimated Iran's nuclear facilities and issued a stark warning to Iran: talk peace or face more attacks. But will Iran listen? Hours after the attack, Iran's foreign ministry warned the United States government of very dangerous consequences.
It's irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy, because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up.
Meanwhile, commentators on Iranian media claim that every American citizen or military in the region is now a legitimate target. More than 40,000 American service members and civilians, as well as billions of dollars in military equipment, are in West Asia, spread out across bases in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Those working in countries closest to Iran, including Iraq and Kuwait, would have only minutes to prepare for an incoming Iranian strike. US bases in Iraq, including Al Asad Air Base and Erbil Air Base, are among the most exposed to Iranian retaliation. Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates and Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar could also be targeted. In March, Iran had warned that it possesses the capability to strike enemy bases anywhere.
If conflict is imposed on us, then without a doubt, the other side will suffer more losses than we will. And in that case, America will have to leave the region. Because all its bases are within our reach. We have access to them, and without hesitation, we will target all of them in the host countries.
Closing the Strait of Hormuz will also have big impact on the economy. The world's most critical oil corridor handles around 20 million barrels of crude oil per day, nearly 1/5 of the global daily consumption. A closure means crippling oil exports from key Gulf producers. Iran's proxies have also condemned the US action. Yemen's Houthi rebels have already condemned the attack as a blatant declaration of war. It has ended its agreement with the United States to halt attacks in the Red Sea. New attacks are expected. If Iran chooses any of these options, the result may well be a long war with alarming consequences. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And well, joining me live from Berlin is Joachim Bettelich. He is a former German ambassador to NATO and former European diplomatic and security advisor to German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Welcome to WION, Ambassador Bettelich. First up, all this while, even during the press briefing of Operation Midnight Hammer, US says it does not seek war, it wants peace. But Iran says that it reserves the right to defend itself. The big question in everybody's mind right now, how perhaps will Iran respond, and what is the larger entanglement and impact on West Asia?
Difficult to answer in reality, because what are the real ways and means of Iran to answer? On the other hand, they know exactly now, from now on, they are under even more severe observation than before. By the way, when the Iranians speak about the middle of diplomacy, well, we have been in the middle of diplomacy since now more than 10 years without a credible and serious answer from the Iranians on the nuclear program. And therefore, well, it's now, they are now confronted to a situation where they will need someone who will help them to come out of a situation. In the beginning, my fear has been, what's the American exit strategy insofar? Now, even the Iranians need a clear exit strategy if the country wants to survive. This is for me clear. And this is not a final blow. And it's interesting to see why Donald Trump has been deciding so rapidly. He has been speaking before about within the next 2 weeks. It has been faster because the Americans were fearing that the Iranians could bring away the uranium gas out of his sites. And therefore, it was clear that the attack had to come. But now, the threat to the whole Middle East, I think it's overestimated from the Iranian side. The Strait of Hormuz, for me, is excluded because they would lose all their possibilities to export oil and gas to China and to other countries. It's the only way of Iran to win some money. What they need now, for me, is, let's say, not perhaps a friend, but a third country, either the Russians or India, as an example, to bring the Americans, the Israelis, and Iran together in order to tailor rapidly a clear and a credible program on disarmament with regard to enrichment. This is extremely important to have a credible solution on the table. I'm just coming back to Paris from Berlin, and one of the leading German newspapers have been writing its title, The Iran Trap. Is it a trap? I've some doubts. It could be, yes. Maybe, yes. But on the other hand, I think the Iranians know now what's really at stake. By the assistance of the US, by a never-seen military operation before. And therefore, they know what's at stake. And they don't receive assistance from the Russians, nor from the Chinese, nor from any Arab country. They know exactly they are alone. And therefore, well, the Iranians wake up at the end of the day, as the Europeans now have to wake up. They've seen the Americans act even without consulting the Europeans. And therefore, Iran has to wake up now definitely and to stop its, let's say, permissive style of not answering to the real threat.
All right, Ambassador Bettelich, on that no credible answer from the Iranians throughout the course of last few weeks and months, the Iranians have been saying that their nuclear program is only for peaceful purposes and for civilian programs. But you say that it's high time Iran needs to wake up. Do you think Iran will perhaps come on the negotiating table? Because every time any kind of diplomatic talks were initiated with Iran, they were bombed, including the latest, because the Iranian foreign minister were having talks. He was having talks with the European officials when US conducted the strike, and the last time when Israel conducted the preemptive strikes, Iran was in talks with the US on nuclear program.
But please, who has been violating permanently since now more than 10 years any, let's say, nuclear civil device? For a civil nuclear device, you need what I call enrichment of 3%. And for medical device, it's an exception up to 20. But you do not need at all 60% and more enrichment of uranium. This is clear, the intention is clear for anyone, is weapon. And the Iranians have never been really stopping these operations since 2015. So I think to some extent in 2015 the Europeans were naive to fall into this Iranian trap, if you want. And therefore it's now up to accept them. Nuclear, yes, they may have a nuclear power plant, yes, they have nuclear facilities, yes, but for civilian purposes and with a clear, credible, supervisable program on enrichment on free up to 20%, but no more.
All right, Ambassador Bitterlich, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us here on WION and sharing your insights with us.
Okay, pleasure as always.